This latest headline coming in from the Supreme Court, global tariffs struck down by the Supreme Court.
Yep, so today was going to be the fate of whether or not Trump's IEEPA tariffs, which about 60 to 75% of the tariff policy right now in the United States is based off of, and the Supreme Court making this decision, a redhead across the Bloomberg terminal, Trump's global tariffs are struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. So this means that the Supreme Court has decided that using IEEPA, which this administration has done when it comes to the fentanyl tariffs and it comes to reciprocal tariffs for other countries, using IEEPA is illegal. Now, given that we are in the financial community, a lot of people may be thinking, does this mean we will not have tariffs? That is not the case. This administration has talked about Plan B. Now they're going to enact tariffs using other policies via USTR and the Commerce Department. But using IEEPA, the Supreme Court is saying that this was illegal. Very interesting considering how they've been using these tariff refunds. And also, the president is going to give a massive address next week. It's the State of the Union. A lot of Supreme Court justices go to the State of the Union. You can imagine this is going to be an incredibly difficult time for this president, considering this was paramount, a huge policy for his administration.
And not only do they go to the State of the Union, I believe often they're sitting in the front row, too. So this might be a little bit more awkward. Annmarie, the noise we were kind of getting from the Supreme Court, is it surprising that they struck it down, or did it seem like we were heading in this direction?
Well, there was a lot of individuals who thought potentially this is just too big. It was too big of a policy to fail, and that they would uphold the president's use of IEEPA. But others were saying, if you look at IEEPA, which has not been used in this way really ever when it comes to tariff policy, they were saying this wasn't the best legal justification to enact these tariff policies. IEEPA is supposed to be used for emergency purposes. Now, some were saying maybe there would be a split decision. You use IEEPA and call the fentanyl tariffs an emergency issue, but not reciprocal. And now the Supreme Court is basically saying using IEEPA, that is not legal. So this is, really can't emphasize how big of a blow this is for the Trump administration.
Let's just get a quick check on how markets are reacting to this. And Annmarie, I know you probably want to look through the decision a little bit more, too. So first, here's your S&P 500. The initial reaction is one of a spike. We were little change. Now we're up by 1/3%. Again, that's not huge gains. We'll see what some of these individual companies are doing, especially those who have joined a lawsuit in order to get tariff refunds. Lululemon, here's a great example of it. That's up 4% this morning. Consumer discretionary, which had been falling, that is now up 1%. Communication services still the best sector. There you go. Let's take a quick look at what bonds are doing this morning, too. They are moving higher, but recall they had been moving higher after PCE yields, that is. PCE had been moving higher, the yields had been moving higher given that PCE was largely hot. So your 2-year yield, that moves in up by nearly 3 basis points. Your 10-year yield, that stands at 4.08. That also moves higher by 2 basis points. So again, the reaction from this has been higher 4-year yields across the curve, and meanwhile, an equity market that's rebounding, now being led by consumer discretionary companies. Williams-Sonoma, those shares up 4%. eBay up 3.6%. Nike, those shares also up 3.3%. So again, a lot of these consumer tariff-exposed companies moving higher. Annmarie Hordern is still around the table with us. Annmarie, what does, maybe we don't know at this point, but there has been this list of companies who have joined lawsuits in order to try to claw back some sort of tariff refund from IEEPA.
Right, because actually if you didn't join the lawsuit and then you had a decision like this, you wouldn't actually be in the queue preparing to potentially or even be legally allowed to get the rebate back in terms of the tariffs that these companies have been paying. So that is why you are seeing a lot of companies like Nike on your screen just shooting up right now, the stock. But it is important to take a step back and remember that tariffs are going to be here to stay for the Trump administration. They just will not be using IEEPA. IEEPA gives an incredible amount of flexibility to this administration to quickly put, honestly, tariffs on, tariffs off, basically overnight. they're going to have to go through potentially investigations, or they're going to have to use other authorities that you can enact tariffs, but potentially only for a shorter amount of time or have certain limits to them. So there now will be limits on this administration, but they're going to get to similar tariff rates when it comes to countries that have done deals, and also just broadly when it comes to the fentanyl tariffs. They're going to have to use other avenues. But this is a big blow for the administration that has really used IEEPA the entire year to enact their entire trade policy.
And that's all of that is so important to keep in mind, Annmarie, when we look at this market reaction. How much of it will last? Do you start to get an unwind of anything we've seen, given the ability, as you've been describing, to enact tariffs in other ways?